Yes,
Let me see
presenter.
if this is, let me see if this is what you want. You can make me a presenter or share my,
Yes, ma'am.
show your screen. Well, all right. What am I doing? I can see you
There
guys.
you are.
Can you guys see my screen?
We sure can.
Can you? Is
Yeah.
it the right?
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
I got it. Here we are. Here we are. Here's our agenda.
You can just scroll up a little bit where the attendees can actually see the times of the
Of course.
flow
Here
of
I
the
go.
agenda.
Let me see.
Thank you. You're a
Okay.
lifesaver, Barbara.
Well, actually, I'm fairly incompetent. Sometimes I just stumble into stuff. I don't know how that
Never
happens.
admit that, Barbara.
Okay,
Is that
so
what you wanted, darling? Okay, there you
that
go.
is perfect. Yes, ma'am. That's exactly. I just wanted them to kind of see a lineup of what's going to happen today. And just to go over the flow that we discussed on Thursday, I will do the opening, and then Dick will follow me, and then Barbara will introduce Panayoti. And then Panayoti will do his presentation. We'll do a 10-minute Q&A, and then we'll go into that 15-minute break, and then we'll come back. Barbara will introduce Roger.
Can you hear me now?
Hi, Leona. We hear you.
And then Barbara will then introduce Dave, and then Dick will close things out. Okay. So for each person that's presenting, I will make you the presenter, and you'll just share your screen when it's your turn. Sounds good? Any questions?
Oh,
Perfect. And again, thank you, attendees, for joining us, and thank you for listening to us ramble for the last 20 minutes. We really appreciate you. The good stuff is about to happen in about 2 minutes.
Do you still want my screen up, Kim?
Yes, ma'am. If you can just leave it up until after Dick does his opening, then you can close yours out, and then you can begin on your introduction of Panayoti.
How do I close it out, dear?
You'll just hit stop sharing. It should be an option down at the bottom or the top of your screen.
over on the
Sure.
right is the sidebar with a camera.
Right.
Show
Or you can
screen.
do it that way as well.
Oh, so if I hit this little like funky TV screen, it'll go away. My screen will.
Yes.
It doesn't look,
Click to stop sharing.
yeah, that's
Amazing.
it. That's that one.
I got it. I've got it. There
That
you
one,
go.
yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, a minute to go.
Right.
What are you counting? You counting down, Dick? Okay.
The numbers are climbing. We're at 122 now, so this is great. Thank you all for attending.
It's terrific.
And Dick, you did say this is the 50th SymROSeium, correct?
What?
You did say this is the 50th?
50th, yes.
Oh.
Yep. Just about ready. Okay, here we go. Hi, everybody. My name is Dick Sargent, and I'm the president of the Denver Rose Society, and want to welcome all of you. And it's a good crowd, over 100 people. This is a particularly important one because this is the 50th anniversary of us in Denver presenting the SymROSeium. Had the pleasure of looking at the program practice on Thursday, and all I can tell you is it's going to be a great program. 3 super presenters, And with that, I would like to now pass this on to Barbara Carvello, who will do the introductions of the speakers. Barbara?
Hello, good morning. I'm Barbara Carvello. I am a member of the Denver Rose Society and a consulting rosarian for the American Rose Society. And it is my privilege to present our speakers today. We are excited. Sorry, guys. We are excited to have Mr. Panayotis speak to us this year about roses around the world. Mr. Kalides is the Senior Curator and Director of Outreach for the Denver Botanic Gardens, a renowned garden designer and collector of plants from around the world. He helped launch Plant Select, which aids gardeners across the state in selecting plants best suited to their gardens. Mr. Kalides, please take it away.
Oh, well, thank you, Barbara. I really appreciate it. And it's a real honor and a pleasure to speak. And I'm impressed with the crowd that you managed to gather on the internet here. At any rate, I have actually given this presentation twice before to your society, but they were over a fairly large interval, and it's changed pretty dramatically because I've been to some new and interesting places, which I'd like to share. At any rate, if you see a few familiar slides, well, we all need to review things, right? Now let's see if I can get, are you seeing a picture, a different picture than before? Or, okay.
Roses around the world.
Excellent. So you are seeing that. This is the start of the actual presentation. This is a picture from the Alhambra. And when I put this on, there were other pictures that had some roses in them. This one I don't see if that there's roses for sure, but there certainly were roses at the Alhambra. Last time I showed you lots of pictures at the Alhambra, but we're going to just start from there because that's, of course, certainly one of the most extraordinary gardens in the world. And if you've never been there, I'm going to start a little closer to home with Denver Botanic Gardens because we have certainly a few areas, and this garden sort of reminds me a little bit of the Alhambra. This is the Schlesman Plaza, and I want to start with Denver Botanic Gardens because, after all, we are part of the world, and we've had quite an experience with roses over the years, so I want to have a little retrospective. This is a picture showing one of our most beautiful parts of the garden, the romantic gardens, and roses are featured throughout it. Here is Rosa Floral Carpet Coral in the Schlesman Plaza. And here we've been looking at more roses. I'm not exactly sure which one this is, but I love the way it's combined with the barberry. It's also in the romantic gardens. And here is the fragrance garden in the romantic gardens. And you can see it that roses are very important here because they're featured in the main container. I believe this is Iceberg. They have featured different ones over the years, but the icebergs are particularly striking there. And then to take a stroller down memory lane, this is the old rose garden, which I actually was quite fond of. We do have lots of roses now in the ellipse, and they're gradually growing, and someday I hope they'll have the same impact. But there was a time when this garden I thought was really glorious, and this is a little stroll down memory lane here. And there's Lottie, who's our resident rosarian at the gardens, working in that garden, which had wonderful clematis and larkspurs. You can see delphiniums. It was great fun, and I'm glad I've saved lots of pictures from it because it was a remarkable garden. It had its ups and downs, and this was one of the downs. This lower area was sort of accumulated humidity and mildew, and it became sort of problematic for growing roses, but some other lovely things were growing there. And I have this labeled Betty Boop, but I don't think that actually is. We have Betty Boop coming up. This is in the romantic garden back now, looking at some of the ones we have now. And then this is, oh, I paint here. Maybe that was Betty Boop. This is in the annual garden, and this has been growing in rather deep shade, which has really impressed me. with how well it's done over the years, and it's the color seems to really explode in that sort of shady exposure. And here's in a sunnier garden. One of our grandest specimens that we have several places around the gardens is Golden Wings. Here it is along the main east-west pathway, where it does quite a spectacle every year. But we have it growing in several other spots as well. This is really, I think, one of the most spectacular single roses we can grow. And this one always brings back memories of Joan France, and I'll never forget, she once, I was asking her about it, and she says, you know, that's a plant that it takes its own zip code, which I thought was the funniest thing I ever heard. And Joan has had a huge impact, of course, not only on the Rose Society, but at Denver Botanic Gardens, where she served as a trustee for years and was a tremendous mentor to many of us. So here's John Cabot next to one of those little kiosks in the Romantic Gardens. When it's in full bloom, it's just absolutely spectacular. But I have noticed that Lottie has to hack at it. It's a little bit like housing a mammoth. You better have room. So I hope you don't mind my sharing a little bit. The Botanic Garden certainly has an enormous number of roses. This is actually Penelope growing at the Tatro Garden. I don't know how this snuck in because we're still supposed to be at the Botanic Gardens. You know, no matter how many times you view these things. Marcia does a fantastic job of integrating roses. I think that's what I was, we're sort of transitioning now to a few of our other Denver sites. And here's Marcia. The next one is a rose, which I believe I was the first to grow from seed from Turkey. It came from a collector named Moimir Pavelka, and it's featured at Kendrick Lake. It's a species called Rosa pulverulenta. And it is, the flower is not huge, but it's, what's wonderful about this is it's a nice compact size, only about a yard tall, maybe 3-4 feet across. And here it is at the Botanic Gardens, where we grow it as well in the Rock Alpine Garden. And on the left-hand side, you can see in bloom, won't knock your socks off necessarily, but the hips kind of do. That's the same plant a few months later when the hips are doing their thing. And it's, I find it to be a really outstanding species. I'm particularly fond of the species myself, and we've got quite a few of them scattered around the gardens. Of course, one of our favorites is Rosa glauca. Here it's growing in several different gardens at DBG, and the dark foliage and the pink flowers are really quite spectacular. And this was actually included in Plant Select. And part of the reason it was included in Plant Select was this specimen here has grown at the edge of the rock garden in a spot that has no irrigation. And with no irrigation, it is done spectacularly. So here's one specimen. Here's another specimen that's growing in a very dry area. And I think the flowers are really quite spectacular. My first foray outside of Colorado will be to Mount Olympus. And one of the highlights of climbing Mount Olympus was finding Rosa glauca about halfway up the mountain. Here it is in the wild. It grows fairly widely in the Eastern Mediterranean, the higher areas, and in Southern Europe. And now I can see why it's such a hardy plant, because this was quite high up on Mount Olympus. And so it's always fun for me to see plants growing in their wild setting. So a lot of what I'll be sharing with you are some of the roses I found on my travels. And finally, one last glimpse. This is Linda Campbell growing at Centennial Park, which is down by the Platte. I don't know how many of you have known it, but we maintained this for many years as part of the Botanic Gardens, but eventually the city has taken it over, and it's actually persisted surprisingly well. And the roses have also done well there, even without the more intensive care that we used to provide. This is a little emblem I found at San Francisco, the airport at San Francisco. They had all of San Francisco's sister cities, their city flowers. We all know that the rose is the national flower of both England and the United States. But I thought you might be interested to know that Barcelona has selected a rose as its emblem. So Rosa Gallicanae, which I'm not familiar with which one that is, but it's kind of interesting. But we're not going to Barcelona. Next, we're going to go to the Huntington Botanic Gardens. Most of us associate the Huntington with their cactus garden, which is one of the most spectacular succulent gardens in the world. But the rose garden, I think, is quite lovely. And one year, Jen and I hit it at its very peak bloom. And it's well worth, if you go to the Los Angeles area, it's at the Huntington is in San Marino, which is near Pasadena. And it's one of my favorite gardens in the world. Every time I go to California, practically, I make a beeline there because I admire the work that's done there. But for those of you who weren't aware that they have a very extensive rose garden, and it has many interesting features here. The agapanthus under the arbor, I thought were very spectacular the year that we took these pictures. And the lawn, of course, this is not typical of what you associate with Southern California, but you can see roses do love it there, which is naturally why they have a rather famous parade featuring roses. Next, I'm going to waft you to Sonoma County in Northern California, where there's a remarkable botanic garden that was founded by a lady named Jane Davenport Jansen, whom I knew. She was originally from Michigan, and she had inherited quite a fortune, I think, maybe from the automobile industry. I'm not sure exactly where, but she spent a good chunk of it developing a rather extensive botanic garden in Sonoma County that is named Quarry Hill because it used to have a quarry there. And this Quarry Hill has become a garden that features plants from China. And next to their one of their buildings, you can see that the building is draped with a Lady Banks rose, a Rosa Banksiana. And if you go to Quarry Hill, they have a wonderful amount of labeling and information about roses, because roses are one of their main collections. And they even have a whole garden designated to talk about the relationship of the various kinds of Asian roses. So here's one of the signs, and around this sign, the garden is very, very extensive, but it's relatively easy to be fooled. I went to beeline of this and looked, oh my heaven, what kind of a rose is this? And we looked closer, and the rose turned into an apple, which are in the same family. But you have to be careful and look carefully, because whoever thought that an apple would look just like a rose, but it did. But they have plenty of roses. One of the most interesting is to see the ancestors of our tea roses, Rosa chinensis. These are the wild forms, and they were actually collected by the staff at Quarry Hill. You can see this was collected in Sichuan in 1991, this particular specimen, which is white. And you can see the very lustrous evergreen leaves. And of course, there in California, the climate is such that they can grow these wild evergreen roses, which show why sometimes our hybrid teas are a little sensitive to frost, because they basically are warm temperate or even subtropical in origin. And they had many specimens with a lot of variety and from many different sources. This one is talking about the general range of Rosa chinensis variety spontaneous is from Guizhou, Hubei, and Sichuan, and they have it in different color forms as well. Here's a dark rose red one, and they have data on everything they've collected. It's a remarkable place, and if you've never been to Quarry Hill, it's well worth a visit. We've gone back many, many times over the years. So these wild roses can be quite beautiful, I think, and you can see how this has led to the myriad hybrids that are cultivated all over the world. There are other roses. I'm showing you the label because I'm not sure quite how to say that. I think that's the kind of name that you need to have a few drinks maybe a couple martinis, and then it'll just roll off your tongue perhaps. It's also from Sichuan, and here it is from a distance. Another very, very showy rose, which I believe is close to the Spinosissima complex. And that's what I'm going to show you next. This is Rosa Spinosissima growing in my home garden. I'm very fond of this. We grow several forms of this Scotch rose. Unfortunately, they don't bloom very long. They tend to bloom for just a couple of weeks, perhaps in the mid-spring, late spring. But even so, they're worth growing not only for these beautiful flowers, and there's many different varieties and forms. This is a much taller form we grow at the Botanic Gardens. And oh, you know what? We've got separated a little bit. We'll see the seed pods because we're now looking at Rosa Fedchenkoana. This is a rose that comes that's related to Spinosissima that comes from Central Asia, and this was a picture I took in Kazakhstan. And we're pretty sure that's what it was. We tried to key it out, and I was quite surprised when I came back from Kazakhstan to find out that a friend of mine was growing it in Colorado, and we'll see that in a little bit. These are some more of the Tian Shan roses that I saw on an expedition I took to Mongolia and to Kazakhstan in 2009 and 2010. Rosa Albertii is very widespread and quite variable. This is the form in the Tian Shan mountains of Kazakhstan. And this is the form from the Altai mountains. And I never saw it in seed, but a friend of mine did photograph it and let me share this picture. This is the seed pod of the Tian Shan form, which I think is quite beautiful. Another rose from the Tian Shan is Rosa Beguryana. It's from the Kazakhstan as well, and it has a very distinctive fruit. This is my friend Yevgeny Belusov. Let me show this a picture of the fruit. It looks almost like a cherry, doesn't it? I was very impressed with this. And this one almost reminded me of golden wings. We found this all over Kazakhstan. Here we are in the Tian Shan, and it's Rosa Tarikantha, which is very widespread and very distinctive. And here it is in the Altai, the same species, but growing rather differently. And here's a little closer view of that. Isn't that a gorgeous color? Unfortunately, we never were able to get seed of this, so I'm hoping someday it's widespread enough in nature. It can't be that difficult to obtain. But it looks almost like golden wings, doesn't it? Maybe this is one of the ancestors. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it. But the real gem of the roses from Kazakhstan was Rosa Cocanica. It's a dark yellow, very compact one, and we did get some seed of this. I'm not sure if the plants have how they've done, but I wanted to share this with you because this is one to look for. It's one of the most gorgeous little roses I've ever seen. Only about 2 feet tall. It does spread to maybe 3 or 4 feet across. Just a perfect size, but the flowers are stunning, and you can see they're produced in abundance. And here are the seed pods taken by my friend again. So it has a very attractive seed. This is my picture of the seed. I did find it in seed, and that's the seed that we collected. And this is the habitat it grows in. It's very much like the foothills of Colorado. The next one is probably one of my very favorite roses, and it's one that many of you have probably heard about. It used to be put in a different genus called Hulthemia because it is so different from other roses. It has the leaves sort of clasp the stem, but it has given that incredible red center to many, many hybrids that have been produced. But the species itself, I heard all sorts of rumors about it. And when I went to Central Asia, I realized, yeah, it could be a problem. It spreads by runners, and it actually carpeted the ground for miles. It could be a bit of a nuisance. We have it in the Rock Alpine Garden, and one of my colleagues who was in charge of the garden once, Dare Bolander, tried to get rid of it because he felt it was a weed, and I nearly had a heart attack. But fortunately, Mike Kinchin, who cares for the rock garden now, has pampered it back to life. But isn't that the most amazing rose, Rosa persica? And I think it has a great future. So these are just some various wild roses I've seen here and there. One of my very favorites was on a trip to Kansas a few years ago. We found this, what looked like a very compact form of Rosa arkansana, which also grows in Colorado. And I went crazy. I just photographed this, and I thought, wow, what a perfect little miniature rose. And then eventually I realized that maybe it was miniature because it was along the road and had been mowed. So I'm not sure whether that's the case or not, but we do have these very compact forms of Rosa arkansana in our own foothills, and they are so beautiful. Maybe it's worth just growing them and then mowing them to keep them like this. But this is, I think, one of the most beautiful native plants, and look how incredibly variable it was here just on one little stretch of road in Kansas. I have a lot of pictures of it. You can tell I was having a good time. Well, next, we're going to go back to that one we saw in Central Asia, and this is growing in a garden here in Denver, a remarkable garden that belongs to a man named Bob Nold, who's written a number of books on columbines, penstemons, on growing native plants. He grew this from seed about 30 years ago, and it is in his garden, and it's that Central Asian rose that you saw earlier. And I've been kicking myself. I need to make sure we get some cuttings and grow this. It would be wonderful in our step garden. I think it's quite attractive. You know, it blooms once in the springtime, but nowadays that can be an advantage. This is one that we grew from seed years ago. It's growing in Marilyn Raff's garden, old garden. It's we got it as Rosa hemispherica, but the jury is out. And some people think it's a form of xanthina, and we'll look at xanthina in a minute. Two of the most amazing roses that grow all over Asia are you're about to see. On the right-hand side, you'll see Rosa xanthina. This is growing at Denver Botanic Gardens, one of my very favorite, very early roses to bloom. And on the left-hand side, that's Rosa Tarikantha growing in the Rock Alpine Garden. Of course, you grow Rosa Tarikantha as much for the spines as you do for the flowers. And I just absolutely love this plant. The spines are so dramatic. And I hope you enjoy looking at spines because you're going to see a lot of them. Here it is in Tibet, growing at about 13,000 feet. It's extremely abundant all over Western China and Tibet. And I just couldn't believe how much there was of it. And so I just photographed it again and again. Here's some more in Tibet. And just amazing thorns. And this, it's a good thing that there's a lot of it because it's actually harvested by the Chinese, and they use it to protect trees. Those are all Rosa Tarikantha that's been cut and bound and put around the stems of young trees to keep yaks from eating the trees. So it serves a very good purpose. There you see the stems of the rose wrapped around it. But of course, what makes Tarikantha such an important rose and a distinctive one is that it has the 4 petals as opposed to 5. These are some pictures I took because it wasn't blooming when we were in Tibet as much as it was in China. These are pictures I've taken in Western China of this particular rose. Here it is at Lake Tianxi, which is in Yunnan. And this is also very, very high, about 9,000 feet. And this area is quite wet, as opposed in China, we saw it in very hot and dry areas. But here it is growing in around Tianxi, and those are rhododendrons growing around it. And to know just how humid the area is, if you look carefully, you'll see that Usnea moss. It's actually a lichen that is hanging from the stems of it. And just, isn't that amazing? So this area grows in an area that obviously has an enormous amount of humidity. So I think that's interesting to know that this rose can take such radically different conditions. Here's another rose from China. I've never figured out which one this was. Okay, and some more roses we found in the wild. China is probably the center of distribution for roses, and we saw dozens and dozens of them. Here's my friend Jeff Wagner on a trip we took 3 years ago in Yunnan, and yet another rose. And then in Tibet, we found a tremendous number of roses as we were driving. Of course, to drive from Yunnan as we did on a bus, this was 2 years ago, I guess. We went from Kunming and Yunnan to Lhasa, which is 1,200 miles. So 1,200 miles is a long way, but all along the way, we'd see roses. And unfortunately, sometimes they were down on the places we couldn't reach. Sometimes they were next to the road. But the problem was that, we couldn't, the flora of China has so many roses, we never had a chance to key them out. And we didn't have permits to collect specimens or seed. But I thought this was a particularly lovely one. So I couldn't help sharing a few of these mystery roses. Oh, here's another close-up of one that could be, well, it's not Omiana because it has the wrong spination, but it was along that road. And here's one careening off a cliff. This is a very dry part of Tibet, and so these roses would have great potential for xeriscape. More roses from China, and I apologize that I don't have names for these, but I do have names for the next one. This is a little botanic garden that's in far western China, and you can tell everybody I was with was taken with this, and I was blown away by this plant. I don't know if it's in cultivation in the United States. This is a very narrow endemic of Yunnan, and here it is growing in a botanic garden, and there's another fellow, he wasn't even on our trip, and he was photographing it because it was so striking. And here's the label they have on it. It's called the Shangri-La Rose because it's pretty much restricted to the area around Zhongdian, which is a city in it's the largest city in far northwestern Yunnan as you approach Tibet. And it's called Rosa Prelucens. So I'll be very curious to hear if any of you grow this. I had to show the label here because it's actually a piece of it looks like shale perhaps, or maybe slate, and they've engraved on it. I think that's pretty elegant. China is a pretty amazing place, I got to tell you, for everything. And these are some more close-ups. Those flowers are absolutely enormous. And later on, we saw it along the roadside. I couldn't tell if this was a wild specimen. I think it may actually have been planted. This was next to a gas station in the Zhongdian Plateau. And I was very struck with this. We never saw it in a place that was truly wild, so it could be pretty rare because we covered quite a bit of this plateau on our several trips. And here's back to that specimen. Isn't that an absolutely gorgeous thing? I'd love to grow this. Rosa Prelucens. And I'm afraid that's the end of my pictures. I hope that I got to figure out now how to, there. Can you see me now?
We can see you. Thank you so much for that presentation. We actually have one question for you in the chat pod, if you have a moment just to answer this question. It's from Susan Tamulonis. I hope I said that right. She asked, is a 4-petaled rose unusual compared with the more common 5-petal? naturally, is it found everywhere in the hemisphere or only in one place as an agent?
Well, that four-petaled rose, as far as I know, is the only four-petaled rose. It goes by the name of Rosa Tarikantha or Rosa Omeiensis, and it's extremely widespread in China and Tibet in nature, and it's pretty common in gardens as well. I've seen it on a few lists of roses, so you can actually buy this and grow it. It does get pretty big, and those spines are pretty vicious, but they're really gorgeous. But I do not know of any other rose that is naturally four-petaled. I'm sure there's some that accidentally occasionally just produce four petals, but to my knowledge, I believe that species is the only one that consistently has four petals. It's well worth growing, and we have a nice specimen in the Rock Alpine Garden to this day.
So you've actually gotten 2 more questions since that. All right, so Jill Arnson asked, I tried to Google Rosa Cocanica and came up with nothing. Is it in production anywhere?
Rosa Cocanica is so widespread in Central Asia, I find it mind-boggling that it's not in cultivation, but I do not think it's currently in cultivation. And it goes to show you how much is still out there waiting for us. We did get seed of it. We did grow some. I'm not sure what the status is, to be honest with you. It was quite a while ago, so they should be doing. Now, we do have quite a number of roses from our expedition growing in Plantasia and in the step garden. So, but none of them are quite as spectacular as that one. That's the one we really have to look for.
Okay. All right, Catherine Mann asked, the last rose you showed, is it fragrant?
You know, I'm really embarrassed to say that everywhere I looked, I was so busy photographing it, I forgot to sniff. But I would be surprised if it wasn't. You know, so many roses do have a wonderful fragrance, and I'm sorry that I'm insufficiently sniffy.
All right, Mary Pat, I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name, but was that the rose that had the red spines called Rosa Xanthema?
Oh, xanthina. There's a Rosa xanthina as well. Its spines are much smaller. They're not as dramatic. They might be reddish, but the one with the really gorgeous red spines is Rosa Tarikantha, which in Greek it means winged spines, because the spines almost look like a wing. Or it almost also goes by Rosa Omeiana, which is named after a mountain in Sichuan called Mount Omei.
Perfect. All right, so I think I messed up those names of those roses pretty badly, but thank you, Panayoti.
No
All
problem.
right, so it looks like that was the final question. If there are any other questions that will come up for you, I will make sure they are forwarded to you via email. And thank
Great.
you so much for your presentation. It was beautiful.
Well, yeah, it went by a little faster than I thought. I was worried about because I had so many images, but I should have lingered on them a little longer. But maybe you'll have me back in a few years and I'll have some more better pictures.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, so you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen and we'll go ahead and move on to the next thing. Thank you all for attending again today. My name is Kim Merritt. I am the Administrative Assistant for the American Rose Society. And we're going to take about a 15-minute break. And in that 15 minutes, there will be a slideshow from the Denver Rose Society with information and pictures and some wonderful information. So after you take your bathroom break or you can get your water or tea or whatever you prefer, please take a moment to look at this slideshow as it is playing. So, and then after that slideshow, we will move on with the next speaker. All right, thank you, Panayoti.
Is it stopped?
Yes. So let me go ahead and share my screen actually.
Good, good.
Give me just a second. Okay, 1 second, everyone. Just a little technical difficulty, bear with me. Okay. Penioda, can you stop sharing your screen? It's still showing that you are. No? Okay, here we go. There we go. Thank you. Okay, can everyone see my screen of the slideshow?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Okay, so we're going to go ahead into our 15-minute break. We will meet you back here in 15 minutes. Please enjoy the slideshow.
Kim, the slideshow is not progressing.
Texted Roger and I said I could bring him over anytime that's convenient. He wanted to come by, but if you were online with the symposium, you're the keynote speaker, so couldn't visit with you. Just let me know and I'll bring him back. And I'll get sandwiches whenever.
Okay, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that slide. It had very good information. We will have it posted to the American Rose Society website at rose.org. If you didn't get a chance to catch some of the information, it will be posted next week under the power resources and then PowerPoints. So don't worry, you'll get to see this information again. We're going to go ahead and get started with the program. And let me just stop sharing my screen. All right. Miss Barbara, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so looks like we have Roger up next on the agenda. So I will give you the floor to introduce him.
Excellent. One of my first experiences as a Colorado Master Gardener was a class I took from Roger Hines. It was absolutely superb. We are joined by Mr. Hines today, who is presenting companion plants for roses. He's been in the horticulture industry for decades, serving as vice president and geneticist for Jackson and Perkins Roses. He judges roses and has authored fact sheets and articles on roses, perennials, garden myths, and growing tips. Roger is a Colorado Master Gardener and has a Bachelor of Science and Masters of Science degrees in agriculture and genetics. Roger, the floor is yours, so to speak.
Okay. Really looking forward to this, and I will take my mug off of here, and we'll get started as quick as we can. So, companion plants for roses, and as Barbara mentioned, I have worked a lot with roses and perennials and even annuals through Plant Select and so forth. And I guess the hat I really enjoy wearing is the one as a master gardener, because you get to do so many things. And I'd like to kind of compare a master gardener to a family practitioner, like a doctor to a family practitioner. And then when you get to the point where you need a specialist, like a consulting rosarian from the Denver Rose Society, you can give them a call. I do my best in all of these, but this is kind of a challenge, because as a master gardener, I get questions a lot about the roses, and they say that they would really like to, I guess they do something with the roses to accomplish something, and I wish I could get that side screen off of there. And I'm going to give it a shot, folks, and see if I can do that.
We don't see the sidebar, Roger. We just see your full screen.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. So here are the questions that they run up, and they say, well, I say, well, like a doctor, why do you want to grow something with your roses? Well, they want to add color to the garden. They like to have a more harmony in form and texture. A lot of them just want to cover up bare spots. You know how the bottom of a hybrid tea sometimes can get a little leggy. Some of them just like to have earlier plants or flower during the season. Some of the others say, well, we're just trying to suppress weeds with something besides mulch. And others say, I got mulch, I just like to cover it. The technical people will say, well, I want to shade the soil and cool the roots, which is still a good idea, and that's the one way to do it. But most people say, you know, I'd like to add my favorite plant. I just don't have a lot of room. So how can I get my favorite plant where I can see it along with my roses? And others of us just like to add some more fragrance. And as my wife will tell you, you keep bringing, Roger, you keep bringing in these cut flowers. If you have something else you can bring with them, so add some cut flowers. I was noticing this week before the snowstorm hit us. This person had his roses, and obviously it's a little early to prune them, so he hadn't pruned them yet, and that happens every year. So what did he do? He put tulips between his shrub roses. And you can see some other plants getting ready to pop out, but all of a sudden he's got some color. And I think that's one of the things you want to think about. What can I do to add some color? Well, I noticed the two latest questions I had as a master gardener. This one lady said, I've got these roses, and the landscape architect that designed, they got the trees in and so forth, but look at all my mulch. And then the gentleman on the left said, well, I did everything they told me to do, but it just doesn't look right. And I thought to myself, you got a huge 9-bark back there, and you got all these spirea bushes. The poor coreopsis and the roses are having a little trouble expressing themselves. So those are some of the problems you see from that standpoint. And here's a gentleman who grows specimen roses. These are just absolutely beautiful, the Grand Dames and Drop Dead Reds and Mardi Gras and so forth. But here again, it just kind of engulfs and comes up as part of the mulch, and you just kind of hate to do that. And another one had sort of the similar idea, and he invited me over, and I looked at it, and I thought, you're off to a good start, but there's some other things that you can do. And if you come to the Rose Symposium, we'll tell you about it. So on that first gentleman who was trying to fill in the spaces, all of a sudden he's got some little white flowers growing, and I can see a peony getting ready to do something. And the gentleman on the left is doing a really good job, but it looks like his ground cover is having a little bit of a challenge to that little miniature rose that's trying to come up there. But you look in the background, he's doing pretty good. His roses are there, but gosh, it's just kind of doesn't look right, does it? So you want to know is how and where to plant. And to get started, you want to kind of plant away from a rose drip line. You want to make sure you're way far enough from a rose to not block its air and its sunlight. And speaking of drip lines, don't get them too close to a rose emitter. All of a sudden you'll have, I saw one case where they were 6 inches apart. And so somebody, and probably both of them, were getting too much water. And another thing is, if you're using annuals, I kind of shy away from getting too close to a rose with annuals, because you're digging up the soil, putting in the plant, and then you're coming back later and pulling it out. And so you're kind of messing up the microsystem that's going on with the compost and the mulch, so forth, breaking down. You're disturbing the root system because, as you know, they go out horizontally quite a bit. And you want to make sure you maintain access to your roses. Well, here's one that I noticed last year. I was kind of helping this guy. He had transplanted 3 roses. So he's got a Rainbow Sorbet Floribunda, and then he's got a Veterans Honor Hybrid Tea, and then he's got a Julia Child Floribunda, and he transplanted them. So it's taken a little while for them to get going, but he was planting it right. He put in some catnip in front of it. And right now at that particular point, of course, you know how much bigger those roses are going to get. They're going to reach out, in most cases, another 12, 14 inches. So they're getting close to the catnip, and this particular catnip is going to be twice the size as you see it here. So I like this. I like the fact that he's got complementary colors, He's going to be covered up in his mulch. He's got different textures and a different look. And as you see, he's made a pretty good shot at it going in there back with those double knockout roses back there and an aster popping his head up. So we'll come back to this in a minute. But first, I want to just kind of go over some things as you're choosing plants. They should have similar growing requirements, such as water, sunlight. Do they need a lot of full sun, or do they partial shade, or whatever? So in a particular case, their favorite plant may be a hosta, but I'm afraid you can't put a shade-loving hosta in front of a sun-loving rose. What about the soil? Does this particular plant that you want to bring in, or we want to look at, does it get along with our Colorado soils, which are kind of clayey and certainly alkaline? And then the climate zone. You may have a plant that you really like, but you find out it's a zone 6. So if it's a perennial, it's probably not going to make it through the winter. There are some plants that need a lot of fertilization, especially in an annual. As you know, you put annuals in a pot, in a container, you're adding fertilizer almost on a regular basis. You don't want to do that with a rose, of course. And you want something that sort of integrates heights. You don't want something tall that's taller than the rose in front of it. It's okay maybe in the back of it. And you want something that's short, medium, and so forth. Same as with colors. You want to pick a color that complements, and we'll see something here in a minute that doesn't complement. And as far as complementary colors, you also want to make sure the foliage and the blossom texture can be different, but you want to really highlight that rose. So you want something that complements it. So the best way in choosing a plant is look at the plant tag. I know in my businesses, we went to a lot of expense and trouble to get a good photograph of them out. Unfortunately, these are kind of dirty plant tags, so I just pulled them out of my bucket here, but it'll tell you the color when you look at it, the photo on the left. But on the right, then you can see, well, how much sun does it need? When does it bloom? How high does it get? How tall does it get? What kind of water needs does it have, and what zone? And then you can look at the features, and that'll tell you, okay, it's going to have vibrant spikes. It's going to bring in butterflies. I think I might want to use this. We just have to figure out where you want to use it. So where do you want to use it? You look back at your garden. Is it an island that you can walk around? If it is, you're going to have to plant it all the way around. Maybe it's just two-sided. You can just go up one side and down the other, not all the way around. Or maybe it just backs up to a fence, or backs up to a house, or backs up to a tree. How big is the area? How big is the square footage? Is it flat? Is it a berm? Is it sloping? And the soil type. It could be clay, but hopefully it's a clay that's been maybe reworked with compost, or maybe it's topsoil, but you want something that's workable. And you want to look at, is it partial shade or sunshine, and what type of mulch do you have? How much does it cover? What's your irrigation system? Is it overhead, or is it drip, hopefully? And of course, all this is to emphasize the rose that you have. We want to romance the rose. We want to highlight the rose. We want to do something in the garden that brings out the all-American rose. And so that's our goal with all this little talk today, is to find out what can we use. Now, I don't have enough time to cover annuals, unfortunately, but we'll address that in a minute, how you can do it. And also, I can't cover all the perennials. When I'm doing a symposium and so forth for, say, CSU or a bunch of master gardeners, I usually get an hour or two, and I can pump out 40 perennials before you know it. But today we're going to concentrate on some of my favorites and some unusual ones, and I can do that with 22. And we talked about catnip, and that's called Nepeta. That's its name. And if you're an old timer like me, you remember Nepeta as being large, usually 3 foot high or 3 foot wide. And you say, well, how in the world can you use a catnip in something like that? But in recent years, on the right, we've come up with a Walker's Low. And that's been a great, great addition to the family of perennials, because it doesn't get 3 feet. It gets about 30 inches and about 3 foot wide, but it makes a really good plant to use. But some of my friends back in Michigan did some great hybridizing, and they came off of Walker's Low and came up with cat's pajamas. It is so good, my friends. It was a perennial of the year last year. 22 inches high and wide, and it blooms from June clear into fall. It likes full sun. I love those little small lavender blue flowers. You can deadhead it if you want, but it will clean itself and actually keep coming back. So I want you to consider a good lavender to mix in, and notice how that blue small flower is highlighting a beautiful pink rose. And that's a great, and it looks, you look at it here and you say, well, Roger, that's too close to the rose, but it really isn't. When you really look down at it from 180 degrees up, it's not that close, but it looks it. So going back to where we were a little bit while ago, you can see where that nepeta is going to reach out and grab a whole lavender before it gets to the roses. Behind the roses, you start to see, well, there's the poppies sitting up there, and they're blooming a little bit different as the time goes on. But we're going to start building this garden as we go through this presentation. And as again, I want you to see how close these things are getting and how the colors are starting to, I don't know, it draws you into the roses, doesn't it? Especially if they got the color that you see. Well, speaking of blue, about lavenders. There we pick up our fragrance, and they have these purple flower spikes that are very, very fragrant. You can handle them in your hands, you can walk by them and the fragrance comes up. Actually, you can, when they're through blooming, you can deadhead them a little bit and they'll come back. They like a well-draining soil, so they will survive in the winter, but they do well with an alkaline soil. And the big ones we're used to working with are Hitcoat and Munstead, and there are others as well. But Plant Select came up with, what, 1 year, 2 years ago, with one called Phenomenal. And in my opinion, Phenomenal is the gold standard for lavenders for Colorado. It is so full, it is so fragrant, it has so many flowers, and it really, really highlights it. Oh, the little guy on the right, that's a Spanish variety. It looks like a Mexican hat, doesn't it? My kids can tease me about this one, but by golly, it's kind of neat. Well, look what the big ones can do. Lavenders mixed in with roses, and they kind of get a little bit out of hand. But if you look back here, I saw this at the David Austin Gardens, and they have used a smaller lavender, and in this case is Walker's Low, but look how it highlights it. It just seems like it makes the whole garden flow that way. Well, salvia. A lot of you have grown salvia, and this particular one's called meadow sage. It likes full sun, and you get these flower spikes. In this case, you got a kind of a violet blue, but they come in pink, and they actually will start coming up in red, and there's a white one come along, and there's a more of a blue one and a pink one. But you could see how it really, those flower spikes come up and highlight the rose. And the foliage isn't bad either. In fact, after it gets through blooming, I like to deadhead it down really deep, and it will come back and have a bloom again. It won't be quite as high, but it still will do really good. But sometimes it can get so high that it might flop. So you gotta kind of watch in that respect. Well, geraniums, that's kind of a common plant we looked at, but it's a beautiful, beautiful flower. And geraniums, they like full sun, but they can get by in shade. They bloom starting in May, go through June, and then you just rely on the foliage. You can get them from 18 to 24 inches high. Some are shorter, some are longer. So that's where you want to look at that plant tag, because that's going to tell you how high it's going to get. And of course, you can look in the garden center and say, well, I want a pink one or a white one or a blue one or whatever, but you're going to get it. One thing I'll tell you about it, they like to fling out those seeds. And what I mean by that is that you're going to get some voluntary geraniums in your garden. They are easy to transplant, and they do kind of decently tolerate drought, which we may unfortunately have to worry about, but they highlight the roses. Campanula, bellflowers, full sun, part shade, lots and lots of cultivars. I've seen blue and purple, and I like them all. And I see a white one, I like that one. Got a nice narrow leaf, so it does compete with the roses. That highlights it. What I like about the bellflower is it starts blooming in June, and it's still blooming in September. It's just great. Now, if you want a deadhead, I'll have to warn you, it's a little tedious because those flowers are small. If you want to really help it to survive, you want to kind of mulch around it so it can stand the winters. It doesn't last a long time unless you divide it, and in probably every 2 years. But the foliage will stay green pretty much through the winter. And the thing is that it does well in alkaline soil. Another one you're familiar with is Achalasia, that's what we call Yarrow. You can see several cultivars there with the colors again, but read the plant tag, get your size, get your colors, because they can be anywhere from a foot tall, like on the yellow one, or it could be 3 foot tall, like the white one out there. They come in yellows, pinks, reds, and whites, so you pick the colors you want. The foliage is kind of fun. It's kind of a ferny, if I can call that as a word, a ferny dark green. They start blooming in June again, and clear into probably the end of August, it's still blooming, and you can deadhead them and it'll bloom even longer. These guys, though, will spread. So either have room for them or know that you're going to have to kind of cut back on them. But I like the foliage that comes about in the wintertime. So you can see in this particular, I love this shot, how it accents await our rose and romances it really well. Just kind of look at the leaf on it and how it just kind of enhances the rose all the way around. This one I like if you want to manage it well. It's a penstemon, as you know. We call them beard tones is a common name, but most of us call them penstemon. Again, they can be 2 feet high, they can be 3 feet high, and they'll get 12 to 18 inches wide. If you get the taller ones, you may have to do a little tying up or staking them because they'll kind of flop on you if you're not careful. But they've got these tubular flowers, and you can see a white one and the pink one, and I emphasize the tubular because wow, it makes it really good for the roses. Again, they bloom in June and July, and I've had them come back in August even, especially if you deadhead them. And again, the foliage will stay green in the winter and partially in the spring, and then in the spring you can kind of clean them up the way you want them. It needs a well-drained soil. They're drought tolerant. Make sure there's mulch around them in the wintertime. And I'd recommend you divide them about every 3 years. It would make quite a difference. But look at those little flowers, that blue one here, for example, coming up with the roses. And again, it just draws you in to what we wanted to draw it into, a rose. And that to me is just why you want companions. Well, I'm surprised you with this one, I guess, the lady's mantle. Golly, why would you put a lady's mantle in this? Well, for several reasons. They can get by on sun or part shade, and they get 12 to 18 inches high. They bloom in June, clear into August. But I like that color. It's just the flower heads are kind of a chartreuse. They're different, but it's the leaves. They're round, scalloped, and they're soft, and that I like kind of turn a smoky yellow green. It's just something that we can kind of work with in different places. They like a rich, moist soil, and they don't like a lot of hot sun, so you want to combine them with something. But pruning will help the appearance. But that's what I did here. Look at those roses that are beautiful, and then you got the nepeta that's adding color, and there's lady's mantle. And so you got the contrasting colors, but they're complementary. You filled in some empty spaces, and by golly, it's just kind of a good eye-stopping appearance, I think, that you might want to consider. Asters, another common perennial, but boy, look what's happening to asters all of a sudden. There are two different cultivars, species you want to call it, or cuttings, but one is a zone 4 and it gets about 2 feet high, and one's a zone 5. It'll get 3 feet high. Look at that tag again, just so tell you how high it's going to get. But I just love the different colors that you can get. And these are the only 4 that I could find close by. But again, the large leaves don't get in the way too much, but they just complement any type of rose. You're going to think I only have red or pink roses, but we'll get to some other colors in a minute. Asters, if they get up tall, you need to stake them because they will kind of flop over. And I'll remind you also that they have underground stolons, which means they can spread. And if you're not careful, gosh, they could be invasive. So I'm suggesting that you maybe want to divide them maybe every 3 years, and then you won't have to worry about that. A little work, but gardening is fun. Oh, surprised you again, didn't I? Baby's breath. It's a full sun, and it'll bloom from June, into August. But I love those tiny white pink flowers and their large airy clusters. The leaves, when you really get out there, they're kind of blue-gray. If you want to, you can deadhead them to increase production. They do well in well-draining soil. They like alkaline soil. There are a few compact cultivars out there, but I say you can deadhead them and get a fall bloom. I wouldn't try to divide them because they got pretty thick roots. But the key thing is that they just add a lot to a garden. And I'm sorry, that's not a rose, that's an echinacea behind it, but you can see how if it was a rose back there, how it would kind of highlight that. But as I say, my life likes for me to bring in cut roses and say, can't you put something with it? Well, what better to put with a beautiful rose than baby's breath? And you go to a florist, and that's kind of what you're going to get. And I like it. Okay, a Mexican sage, and this one is called Vermilion Bluffs, and it is a plant select winner. It is a smarter plant. And oh gosh, look at that cardinal red flower coming up. Have you ever seen anything like it? I don't know what you would call that, but it's just one I've been looking at for the longest time and thinking it's got to be the one that we've got to really consider. I have got to say that I have seen this in Denver at 5 years of age, and as I say, it is plant select. It gets about 3 foot high if you let it, and about 30 inches wide. It starts blooming in midsummer, and it'll go clear into fall. So it's kind of a crazy guy, but I'd really like for you to think about that, where you could put it. And I'm just starting out with it because I didn't have room for it, but it's going to be around some different colored roses before I get through. Here's another. It's actually a sage, but it's also a salvia, but it's kind of new and different because it spikes so well, and it's got another good, besides being low maintenance, and it's very easy to grow, and the blooms will last a good while. But golly, the rabbits don't like it. And I've seen this around gardens that have to fight with rabbits, and the rabbits just kind of stay away from the whole garden when that happens. So won't guarantee it, don't have research to prove it, but it's something you may want to consider. Well, I don't know. You say, well, peonies are just like a rose. Why would I want to put the peony in there? Well, color. It's got a different type of leaf. It's got a beautiful foliage. I mean, it gets dark green, but what I like about it is the color that you can get and the height when I need height. It likes full sun. They bloom in June, and then when they're through blooming, they leave you with a seed capsule that's kind of fun to look at. They come in many colors. They go with our alkaline soil, but the foliage will stay green all summer. So if you got the spot where you need that green foliage to fill in, and the other plants are giving you the color, especially the roses, this is a good place to look for and a good plant to think about. So here's what I come across. There's your roses in there. You'll find them. You'll see that red peony up in front. You'll see the white roses in the back. And you notice the little sage down there, the blue coming around. So that looks like a real full amount. The foxglove's coming up, but all in all, it's a place for peonies to have their place. And then as they die down as far as the blooms go, then you've got that great solid green that's going to further augment the roses as you go along. Okay, I've got to get into some different sizing here, and I chose Heuchera for several reasons. These are Corabelles, as we commonly call them. The most popular one is the Purple Palace because it's purple and it's popular, of course. It will produce, all of them will produce a tiny white and sometimes a pink, like you see there in the middle flower, that'll last for a pretty good while. And the foliage, of course, will be any color that you want, like a purple, a yellow gold, a hairy green, and now the two new ones are black on the far left, and then there's a caramel color setting and coming around. So you've got some color to work with, and they'll do good underneath different plants because they do fine in shade. You can deadhead them to prolong the bloom. I don't know that it's worth it because we're really looking at the foliage. They like alkaline soil. Be careful, they can heave in the winter, so kind of make sure you've got some mulch around them before the winter sets in. And then in about the third year, you can divide them, and so you can just have that much more. But as the flowers kind of fade away, they still work with roses really well, understanding that they're going to be at the bottom of it and kind of protect the rose from the bottom, and they can do a lot of good there. But having these spikes come up through the roses kind of again highlights your rose quite a bit, and I think it's got a great place for it. Moving right along, sedums. Now, Sedum Autumn Joy on the right, pretty popular. We don't see it much in the rose garden, but there's a lot of things I like about sedum, and this Autumn Joy is one of my favorites. But it can get up to almost 3 feet. It'll be at least 30 inches high, and then the width maybe not so much, maybe 24 inches. So you might say it looks kind of a little leggy, but on the left is Sedum Autumn Fire. And notice the difference. It came from Autumn Joy, but notice the difference. The blooms are just that red color, that kind of the fiery red color, and the leaves they're different and they're fuller. They go all the way to the ground, and it's a more compact sedum. You don't have to deadhead it. It's a very low maintenance, but these guys give you a year-round look. Right now, mine are up about 2 or 3 inches, and they look like little button marbles. And then the foliage will start coming up, and then it comes along, and then you get the flower, and then after the flower, it kind of fades out. And oh my gosh, you got something there till clear into fall. I didn't trim mine back till late November. They are drought tolerant. Now, you can divide them, but you better wait about 6 years because you really want them to get them established, and they do best if you come back and divide them after about 6 years. But I really think there's something they're going to think about. Oh, Zaspinaria. Oh gosh, where did you come up with this? Well, it's a Plant Select, and I got a lot of fellow master gardeners say this is one of my favorite plants. We also call it Creeping Hummingbird Trumpet, And my friends out west call it California fuchsia. Kind of looks like that, but it is a plant select. Part sun to full shade, so not real bright sun all the time. It can be a ground cover because it can get, maybe 6 to 8 inches high, but it'll get wide. It'll be, you want to plant them 18 inches apart, and it can be very, very vigorous. But here you've got the chance for a very bright orange flower, and it starts blooming in mid to late summer, and it just keeps going and going. But it's great for erosion control, for mass plantings. Doesn't take a lot of water. It can be aggressive, but there's a place for it. Those little, they don't call it hummingbird trumpet for nothing, because it looks like a trumpet, and hummingbirds love it. Boy, they just get their beaks in there and off they go. Well, that's kind of a ground cover, but let's look at some ground covers. And we saw that earlier in the slides where the guy was using snow and summer terrestrium, and they can be 4 to 8 inches high, and they spread out again 18 inches wide. They like the full sun. They don't need a lot of water. They don't need a lot of fertilizer, if any. If you fertilize in your yard, try to keep it off of them. But these small white flowers got a different look than your baby's breath, but it's a good way. You have to admit, this guy's covering up his mulch pretty good. And the foliage will stay there when the blooms are gone. You can shear them back after they bloom. They may come back a little bit with that, but as I say, it prefers an infertile soil. And you want to make sure that as you get in there, that you don't overwater them, because you can cause them to kind of rot at the base if they get way too much water. And so I've asked this guy, I said, you got to be careful, because you kind of got a slope from this berm, and you don't want to overwater these guys. Well, a good ground cover is Veronica. Likes the full sun. You can have them short, you can have them tall, so look at that plant tag. But you see that one on the left is going to get close to 20 inches high, and that's maybe a little higher than you want for a ground cover, but those on the right, that's about right. And of course, they make a nice ground cover. They fill in closely where you want to. You get a blue one, a pink one, and there's even the white one that spike up there. Nice narrow leaves, and they bloom all summer, June to August. They like a well-drained soil. You can divide them all you want to and prune them down in the summer, because they will pile up on you if you're not careful. But I'll show you how that works with the roses here in a minute. This is one that I hope you consider. Maybe you already have. It's a ground cover. It's called Dragon's Blood Sedum. And you can see the sedum part when you look at the foliage under there, but look at that. Look at that bloom. That's a brilliant red flower that starts kind of late in summer. And late after that bloom kind of goes away, that bloom turns kind of a bronzy red, and it matches the foliage, and the foliage turns bronzy red. They're very easy to plant, just a plug or two here and there. You can transplant them. I've got a 4x6 area below my garden box that I grow this, and I give it to anybody that comes by, my kids, my friends. I don't know, I'm just so sold on it, and I just like the looks of this one right up next to that rose and so forth. But it dry sunny spots, it does really well. Again, we'll look at how that works. And so on the left, you see that bronzy look flower after it was bright red. And you'll see the Zaspaneria that's getting kind of tall and engulfing it. And so I encourage this guy to change it up a little bit. And you see now on the right, he's still got his dragon's blood, but he's got his Zaspaneria he's trying to keep under control, but now he's put in his roses. Gosh, the orange and the rainbow sorbet will have different periods of time where it'll complement, and then they might fight a little bit with it, but he's starting a climbing rose in the back, and so this is going to really fill in really nice. I like it. Hope you do too. Look at your poppies there. While I grab a little water. You know, poppies, oh gosh, they come in many colors. And their advantage is that, excuse me, They like the full sun. They can be various heights, but they have these such large flowers. But as I say, they bloom in May and June, and they have these large, coarse green leaves. And after they bloom, that's it, except for a very interesting seed pod that you see developing inside these blossoms. But the seed capsules will extend the season of interest. So you'll have the nice foliage reaching up there, and then you'll have that seed pod coming along. What I do is after all that's I'm tired of it, I prune it down to the ground and up it comes again. So by winter time, you've got it probably 6 inches high. They live forever. You can divide them, but you kind of wait after 4 or 5 years to do it because of their root system. But it's just something that can highlight and be a little different. And you can see how this gentleman worked it on the right over there with the roses in the front and roses in the back. And it's just one place that you can try it, and we've been looking at some of the other uses of it in a second here. I don't think you expected me to come up with an ornamental onion, did you? Well, I kind of became a believer in this when I started seeing different colors. I have found the pinks, the blues, and the whites, and as I say, they spike up about 3 to 4 feet high. They won't be about 2 feet wide. And they will start doing this about late spring and early summer. But they just, once they start to fade away on the blooms, they become kind of a skeleton-y, shadowy, whitish look, and they'll stay there like that most of the summer. And that's just, the foliage doesn't fight with anything, but it just kind of draws you into it. But there's another thing is that we know that roses kind of love garlic species. And for whatever reason, we haven't really researched it fully to approve it, but some people say, well, it kind of increases the perfume of a rose. I'm not sure about that, but if it works for you. But what I found was I didn't have any aphids on my roses when I had allium next to it. Now, some people say, well, it helps prevent black spot, but I can't say anything to that because I don't have black spot, and I can't say that any research is done, but that aphid thing's kind of got my attention. And I thought, well, I'm going to keep researching this and see what happens. But aside from that, it can do some pretty neat things. And of course, this allium here are photos I took where they were spent, but doesn't it kind of on the left over there kind of highlight the roses a little bit? Doesn't fight with the leaves and the foliage, and you can see the tall one in the back. It just sort of gives you a different background, a different color background. And the short ones can be even a little bit different use, and you'll see some over there on the right hidden in with the salvias. One that most people think about when they look at tick seed or coreopsis is the yellow color. But by golly, the coreopsis are now coming out in a lot of different colors. They're coming out with red eyes. They're coming out with a brighter color here and there. But I really like the coreopsis because they can do so much. So they can be about 18 inches tall and wide. And they start blooming in midsummer and clear right into early fall. Yellow, of course, is the most prominent color, and if you're looking for yellows to use, but think about where you can use them, because the leaves they're kind of again a ferny emerald look to them. They kind of mound up. They're very drought tolerant. They're very low maintenance. You can deadhead them in the fall and then clean them up in the spring, and they will spread a little bit. They'll throw out some seeds and off they go. But again, get the color and the other flowers you have mixed with them to highlight your roses, and draw it into those blooms. And they're going to be there when that rose dies out, and before the next flush comes along, you're still going to have some color. Well, I don't want to shortchange my friends with the rambling or climbing roses here. There's hope for you yet, because clematis can do really well, I think, in helping complement and coordinate with roses. They can mix right in with them. They come in various heights, as you know. They come in various prune requirements. They flourish well in an alkaline soil. They need a little mulch at the bottom to keep the soil clear, but they will tolerate the dry conditions. But check that plant tag to see how they grow and what they're going to do, because you don't want it to fight with it. But the plant tag will also tell you when they bloom. And believe it or not, you have some that bloom early, that bloom midsummer. You have some that bloom in fall. You have some that bloom all the way through. So when you're going looking for a clematis, grab that plant tag and see when they bloom to fit what you want, and then choose your color that you want. I will give you one warning on clematis, and that is the large blossom, large leaf ones are more susceptible to wilt. And one thing I don't want you to have is a nice clematis and your roses going like you see here, and then all of a sudden you've got some wilt. So look at the plant tag, and the best way to get away from that is get the smaller varieties. There are some out there that have a smaller blossom, and you'll have less problems with wilt, and some are very resistant to it. And I think you're really going to have a lot of fun with it. And you can't remember all the names, but there's a Frida and a Henry and a Sheriff and a Bill. Holy Spirit's probably the most popular ones, but in any case, that's kind of what you'll come up with. Let me go to the other drink here. Now, let's start putting this together. Here's one again where we saw the roses and the peonies and the sage. So you know that story, that as the peonies go down, the green foliage is going to accentuate the roses, and the sage is going to give you foliage in and out. And you might even look in there, you'll find an allium. Here's another collection I found. There's a salvia, and then look at your geraniums down in the front. And all of them are highlighting the roses again. And they're all fitting together really well. And they're all going to be blooming in this particular case all at one time. Even the baby breath down there is doing pretty good. But again, it's a little close together, but boy, you got the color. And back to my sittings that I had at the start of this, I've got my roses all over the place. The allium, notice those in the back. Ladies' mantle up in the front. And then for the blue color, I chose the geraniums. And that backs up against a major green hedge in the back. So you can sit there, but I'll tell you, you're going to have hummingbirds and pollinators visit you as well. Just be quiet when you do. There's a nice little collection on the left. That's a lemony color rose. The penstemon, the red penstemon. That's a sedum I didn't talk about, but that's a special sedum that's like a conifer type of base to it. But then you've got your salvia coming to the right. And in the background, there's more roses, and there's some asters starting, and the irises are fading away. On the far right's one of my favorites. In the back is a red Mayday shrub rose that gets quite high. The yellow rose is David Austin's Golden Celebration that just pumps them out constantly and so fragrant. Get me talking roses here, I won't stop. But you see the Coreopsis filling in down there, and different type of yellow than the Celebration, and the aster in the center is coming around, and the lavender to the right. And this has been put together pretty good. There's a little bit of a rock showing up there. It's pretty well covered, but that's coming out well. And the bottom one, I got the picture because that's an intrigue. The rose is called Intrigue, but I like how they combine the Veronica ground cover to complement and highlight the purple. Actually, the Intrigue is a purple color once it's really going. So that's a way to have a ground cover, roses and so forth. And that's a pretty good combination. Remember the guy with the tulips? Well, look where it went. And I put the flag there just to show you where the tulips had been. But look what's coming along. The asters are coming up, and he's actually got some Shasta daisies there in the front, but there's your Sedum autumn fire, and this is filling in, and then you can kind of get a glimpse of where the coreopsis is starting, and look how this is starting to develop. And the left one was a year ago or 2 years ago, and you can see how these things are starting to pick up and starting making your bloom. And you look down at the bottom and see how it's starting to grow even better. And that rose there, and then on the right side is a Bailey's Sunrise Sunset. If you ask me my favorite rose, I'd have to say that's right up there with the top of it. Bailey's has done a super job with the Sunrise Sunset, cleans itself, blooms all summer long. And it's a shrub rose. Don't need really worry, it's zone 3. Of course, this is a south facing one. So anyway, on the right and all over, you see the coreopsis, you see the Veronica growing. What's that little pink thing in the front? That's a Gara. And I think that was mentioned in the last presentation, but Gara can give you another little sensation we don't have time to work with. Well, this guy called me, and he's got his roses, but he just says everything seems to be fighting itself. I got my coreopsis, and I got 2 roses here. I got a Cortez rose, and then off the side, I got the new, well, I call this Carefree Delight. Roger, can you help me out here? Because when you look over on the left, he's done a pretty decent job, but he's got all of these big viburnums in the back, and then he's got an anemone purple in the back, and he says it's just not tying together. So we went to work on it. And what do we do? Instead of 2 roses, we now have 7. We've got Bailey's Calypso that you first see, and then as you move on back, the Carefree Delight was moved. There's another red rose that I hybridized that I haven't named yet. And in the back, I've got some brand new. These were barely 3 or 4 months old. They're Winnipeg Park. And behind the Winnipeg Park, and we've got some viburnum growing. In the front, we picked up everything you can think of, from an aster to even a little bit of a mum there. But anyway, that's all starting to go together, I think, pretty well. Now, in this particular case, this is an island, so you can walk all the way around it. So on this upper left, you have the place where I can't see the roses, but you got poppies, asters, iris, peony from that angle. But when you look at the bottom left, you see, oh, there's some double blooming knockouts, and it's working pretty good. I can see them with the poppies over there, and they're not going to be there forever. And by the time the poppies go to their black seed head, the rose is going to be up there, and the same thing is going to happen with the peony in the front. As you walk around to the other side, this was taken a little bit later than the other photos, but you can see how the knockouts now are getting up and getting their height. And of course, the knockouts just bloom and bloom and bloom. But to highlight that is some phenomenal lavender that's coming along. The blue with the red, I think, really works really well. And he's starting to work with that on the right over there. That's a purple tiger floribunda he's got going, and up front he's got some penstemon and so forth. And in the middle over there on the right, in that purple looking, that's a heuchera. So give it another year, and then you're gonna have something. Well, we've looked at everything, and I just want to make sure that you have time to stop and smell the roses, because that's what it's all about. And this is my granddaughter Emily, and she just loves the roses pops, so I keep growing them. I guess one of the things I want to leave you with is a reference, because I've given you a ton of data that I don't expect you to remember it all, and we didn't have time to leave it on the screen so you could take a lot of pictures of it, but I'm going to refer you to a book on perennials. And my good friend Tracy Oss has put this together. It's in its 3rd revision edition. And my friends, it is phenomenal. It tells you everything you didn't know or want to know about perennials. It tells you how to plant them, how to prune them, how to grow them, how to fertilize them, how to cut them for cuts. It has an index that tells you and a concordance that will help you guide to the height and the color and the zone, everything you want to go with it. But there's must be 400 or 500 pictures in it. And it features a little over 200 perennials. And it's written in a narrative that you could say, well, it's just like she's talking to me. Because she presents the plant, describes it, talks about its maintenance. She talks about how it keeps going. She talks about similar plants. It keeps you on the straight and narrow on the zone and the soil and the sun. And in the very back of it, there are a number of pages where you can journal. So as you go through with your roses and your perennials and so forth, you can write in there what worked, what didn't, when did I plant it, where did I get it, what was the year that I got it, all these different things you can journal. So everything's right together. Now, we didn't have time to cover the annuals and different things like that, so I'm going to direct you to plantselect.org. If you haven't been there for a while, you're in for a treat because it is well upgraded. It is a smart website for smart plants, for smart gardeners. You go on there and you make this selection and you can say, okay, I want an annual and I want this color and I want this height and I want this and I want that. And it'll lead you right to it, pictures and all. And you can go to perennials and get that. You can go to shrubs, trees, you name it. And I have to hand it to Plant Select. They have done a super job. They do a super job on getting you plants. And so I want to remind you that this is one you really want to look at. Bring it on. It's there. One of the first questions I'm always asked, Roger, is, I'll get your guides, but what's in your toolbox? Well, maybe these things you haven't seen before. The rake up at the top for roses. Boy, if you want to get in there and pull that bark back so you can put some mile-high fertilizer in, this puppy works. And you can push it right back, give you a long extension. They should be around, but I swear by that one. On the other side, there's a great tilling tool and a planting tool. You can dig down. It's very easy on the arms. The one in the center is a Japanese sickle. And you don't use it for roses, but when you get ready to prune a lavender or an aster or something like that, you don't have to get your pruners in there and do it. Just grab a bunch of them and pull that sickle through there, and it just zips it right off, and your hands are full like you want it. And of course, screwdriver. What? You don't use a screwdriver? That's my water meter. You use that screwdriver to determine if the soil is wet or dry. Rather than try to get your finger in the ground, put the screwdriver in. If it goes in easy, comes out muddy, it's wet, maybe too wet. And if you can't get that screwdriver in the ground, it's too dry. So anyway, I throw that in there for you because I am ready for questions, Kim. However you want to forward them to me, I am ready to go, and we'll just see where that can lead us to. Okay?
Okay, what a wonderful presentation, Roger. I really enjoyed that. Okay, so we do have a few questions for you, quite a few questions. We'll get as many as we can in the 10 minutes. Sandra Sommer asks, do you know what apricot rose is behind the purple salvia?
Oh, gosh. I really don't know. I will look it up and get that to you because I had so many doggone plants, I can't remember which I had.
Okay. All right. So we'll make sure we get that question forwarded over to you. All right.
Sure.
So Jill Arnson says, do the dreaded JB leave the bell flowers alone?
Yes and no. I can't say for definitive that they do, but in most cases, they're going to go for anything that they're hungry for, but I have not had any problems with it. And I've been into a couple of other areas and I've seen where the roses just I mean, the beetles stay away from them. So, but they like other things a lot better, your linden tree and their crab apples and your roses quite a bit. But there's no been real good research, but there's real good research by Dr. Crenshaw on roses with Japanese beetles, and you wanna be looking that up, and that'll help you a lot. That'll keep them away too.
Okay. All right, Linda Fulton says, could Roger talk about the invasiveness of the yarrow with the roses?
Yeah, that's, I guess the main thing that I do with it is I just keep digging it out. Thought I had another slide I could show you how that was working, but I guess I don't have it where I can hold it up to you to show you. I'll keep looking for it because I was positive I had it. I have to dig it out, and in some cases I just pull it out because even when you deadhead it, it'll come up. But all of these plants have a tendency to want to reach out because it can actually get out to about 3 foot wide. And I use that little digging tool to kind of pull them out. I do that with just about everything I need to because it can get in deeper and dig out the roots that you want to go. But as I say, a yarrow Campania can get 3 feet wide. I will say this, yarrow I do divide every 2 years and clean up the middle of it and everything else and divide it, get it back to the size that I really want. Okay.
All right, Susan Rutherford asked, please tell us more about the most beetle-resistant companion plants.
Oh, there's not the beetle-resistant, is that what she said?
Yes, sir.
The research that I've seen has shown that there really isn't anything that beetle will not eat. And those that are resistant to it, of course, are the garlic ones. They don't like anything like the onion, and they just kind of shy away from that. And consequently, we're hoping maybe that allium will help us get rid of that. But it's hard for me to say because I don't have the Japanese beetle yet, and I hope I don't, but I know I will in time. But there just hasn't been enough research to say that it's going to be that resistant to it. I know the sedums and the ground covers are going to be pretty safe with it. I haven't seen in certain areas where they have the beetle, I haven't seen it on geraniums, and I haven't seen it on penstemons. So that's something to consider. Now, as far as ladies' mantle, I have seen some on a ladies' mantle, but they would click right off because they can't take the big leaf. Asters, I don't know. The jury's still out on an aster. Okay.
All right, Terry Connolly asked, what was the name of the golden David Austin rose?
That's called Golden Celebration. It's been around a while. Extremely hardy and very fragrant. Big blossoms. It has 180 to 120 petals. It just keeps producing and producing, and I actually prune it back. If you only take about 11 inches off the top in the springtime, it's going to get bigger. If you want it at the same height, you want to take about 20 inches off. And if you want it to get a little bit shorter, take it all the way down to about 12 inches high, and then it'll come up to a normal capacity. But extremely hardy. The one you saw in the picture is planted in 14 to 7 years old, and it just keeps going. I put mulch up around it in the wintertime, and in some cases I have to even tie up some of the long branches that just get way out there. But great rose, glad you asked.
All right, Susan Tamulonis, I think it is, asks, could the allium roots offer exudates that contain sulfur compounds that help with black spot and aphids for nearby roses?
And I'm sorry, Kim, but as you know, my hearing challenge, I didn't quite understand the question. Try me again, please.
Okay. Could the allium roots offer exudates that contain sulfur compounds that help with black spot and aphids for nearby roses?
No, I don't think so. The black spot, I know in some cases the sulfur will help it. Hopefully you got a rose that is black spot resistant. But if I run into a case of black spot, mildew, midge, anything like that, I recommend potassium bicarbonate. Potassium bicarbonate is organic. Trade name that I've seen is called Green Cure, and that'll work on everything that you've got in your garden that's got especially black spot or even mildew. You want to spray it about every 3 weeks, 2 weeks to 3 weeks. But I don't rely on sulfur. I don't like to working with the sulfur, but you can. And as I say, try the Green Cure when you get into something like that. It prevents it and it kills it. It's gone.
Okay. Phyllis Godfredson asks, Nepeta cat's pajamas. Do bees love it, and does it self-seed like bigger nepetas?
Bees love it. Butterflies like it. And gosh, I haven't had any problem. I haven't seen anything where it does self-seed. The 2 years that we've been working with it, both in research and so forth. And for example, the town of Fort Collins has a Nature in the City garden. And it's a pretty good sized garden, but it's got 40 cat's pajamas in it. It's just wait till I get a picture of it to show you one of these days. But I have not seen any self-seeding of it happening. I imagine it's going to be a dividing situation after a couple of years to get some more of it. But we started it with just a little 2 and a 4-inch plug and put 40 of them in, and it looks pretty good. I'd rather put them into a gallon to start them and then plant them in. They'll kick right off. Okay.
All right, so we have one more question. It's from David Davia. Is there a perennial lantana?
Is there a perennial lantana?
Uh-huh.
Yes. There is, and it comes in pink and I think blue and might be even a white one, but they need some winter protection, Dave. And but lantana makes a great ground cover. I wouldn't say they're invasive, but they do spread a lot. I have them in around some viburnum and also some hibiscus and, hydrangeas. And I noticed that the first year they look like they were dead, and next thing I know, here they come back again. So pretty much a perennial that you can count on, but just be prepared that if they have a really tough winter, they'll heave on you and then they may not come back. But they're very easy to divide and transplant and keep them going that way. And if you could put in a few and then keep transplanting and moving around, you should have a pretty good covering on them. And I love the color. They just really bloom up really nice. So good luck with you, Dave.
Perfect. So there's several questions for you. I'll make sure they're forwarded to you. And if your question did not get asked, don't worry. You will get a response via email. Thank you so much. Thank you, Roger, for such a great presentation. So Miss Barbara, let's see. And Roger, you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
I'm good. Looking at it as quick as I can.
There you go. Okay. All right. So Miss Barbara, if you want to go ahead and introduce Dave.
You betcha. Dave Ingram is a member of the Denver Rose Society, and he is a master gardener, consulting rosarian, master rosarian for the American Rose Society. He is my go-to person many times for questions. and he's going to talk to us. I'm sorry, guys, I sort of lost my information here. He's going to talk to us today. Dave, what's the name of your talk again, love? I'm sorry.
Well, it's new rose selections for your garden. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the new stuff that's out there this year.
Well, then, take it away, Dave.
Okay. Are we seeing it yet?
Yes, sir. Can you put it in full mode if you click on slideshow at the top? There we go.
Okay. Well, thank you, Barbara, and welcome everyone. I'm so happy to see so many people are, so many rose lovers and plant lovers are here to share our presentation today. I want to encourage you to grab your phones or your cameras if you want to take some photos of any of the slides I'm showing. There's going to be, this will be a short presentation that features some of the new roses that have most caught my eye, and I hope they catch yours too. I want to invite everyone to visit our website, the denverrosesociety.org, where you will find lots of information, articles on how to grow roses, and importantly, plant them. You're also going to find a list on our website of consulting rosarians, over 24 people who are ready to help you if you have any questions about how to grow roses in our region. In addition, if you're watching this presentation from another part of the country, you can either reach out to your local Rose Society to get a consulting rosarian that can help you in your area, or on the American Rose Society website, there's a list of all the consulting rosarians in the US. I want to be clear to everyone watching that we have people here, rose growers, who are here for you, here to help you. And so just reach out to us and we can help you get your gardens off to a good start this year. I also want to invite everyone to our rose pruning demonstration in a couple of weeks, at the end of the month. It's a little early to be pruning our roses right now. I think you've seen the weather patterns hitting us. In addition, we're also supposed to have some more hard freezes. So I think it's best, particularly when it comes to hybrid teas, floribundas, that we hold off on our pruning until we get into early May, where it's safe to begin starting new growth that will result in fabulous flowers in late May and early June. That being said, when you go out shopping this year to find some new roses, be aware that roses in our nurseries tend to come from a couple of main suppliers. You can also buy roses online from online nurseries. The two main wholesale companies that, we don't see them, we just see their products in our local nurseries. So Weeks and Star Roses are the two biggest suppliers, and they will ship out bare root plants that came out of cold storage and will be shipped to local nurseries, usually after the first of the year, where some of them pot them up and are growing them right now, and the new inventory should start showing up on the shelves and benches any day now. In addition, some nurseries get their plants from wholesale growers who receive these plants, grow them on, and then ship them to the local nursery. So as we speak, plants are growing and being shipped to local nurseries, and it's pretty much time to start going out there and seeing what's available. In addition, I mentioned that there's some mail order nurseries, and we are blessed to have, I believe, one of the best right here along the Front Range, located up in Westminster. High Country Roses now has over 600 varieties, and they are also going to have some of the new roses available that I've mentioned today. One of the things to be aware of with online nurseries is that they've been reserving plants for a while and their supplies may be running out. So you need to contact your local mail order nurseries soon to see whether they still have what you're looking for. The high country plants will be in smaller pots, as you can see, kind of the quartz size pots. And so if you get some from them, you'll need to plant them and grow them on for a year or two until they reach the full size. Whereas some of the plants that you buy in local nurseries are often in 1 and 2 gallon size pots and will reach maturity a little quicker. But either way is a good way to plant roses. And in my opinion, all of us need to plant a lot more roses. The roses that come to your local nurseries will be in one of 2 forms. They'll either be grown on their own roots, which is where you take a cutting of the named variety and root it out. This is slow, and it isn't common to find it in local nurseries. Or you can get a rose that's been grafted onto a different rootstock. You can see on the left how distinctively different that is. This has been going on for like 150 years in this country, and it's the best way for suppliers to get roses to us, full-size roses to us that we can plant in our gardens. And the reason I mention this is that whereas we as a rose society like to plant own root roses whenever we can, many times when you go to a nursery, all you can find is a grafted rose. And I want to encourage everyone to buy whichever plant they fall in love with, but you just need to find out which type you're getting because it matters when we plant them in the Rocky Mountain region. Here we need to plant our grafted roses 2 to 4 inches below ground level. This helps protect that precious graft union from our long winters. Even own root roses are best if you plant the branching point slightly below ground level. If you're joining us from another area of the country, then I suggest you contact your local rose society to get the best instructions on how to plant your roses in your area. But along the Front Range and in the foothills of Colorado, you need to get the growth point of your plants below ground. When you're buying roses at a local nursery, if it's a grafted plant, I know we fall in love with the flowers at the top, but what I've learned to do is to buy the base of the plant. This is the part you're going to be planting with. It's the part you're going to be living with for the next 10 or 20 years. So look for good, even branching. You don't want to buy a rose that has one cane that's like a pencil stem and another cane that's the size of your forearm. Look for balance and look for a plant that's trying to grow like the one on the right. This is a plant that when you put it 2 to 4 inches underground, it's going to be surging up to give you plenty of stems and plenty of flowers each year. An own root plant, and there's more and more of them showing up in the nursery. Some of the floribundas, many of the shrubs now are all in their own roots. Just look for good balanced branching and look for a plant that's enthusiastic and trying to grow. Pick the best plant and plant it properly, and you'll have great roses for many years. And with that, let's take a look at some of the new stuff out there. I'm going to start with some of the week's roses. This is a hybrid tea called Perfume Factory. That led me to believe it just might be fragrant. And in fact, look at that. Look at the form of that flower, the way that the color just sort of leaches into the white outer petals. It's supposed to have a good, strong, fruity and spice scent. In local nurseries, it'll come in as a grafted plant, which is fine. Now you know how to plant it properly. But you can also get this one as a smaller own root plant from High Country Roses mail order. Here's one called Fun in the Sun. And the hybrid teas, the grandifloras, the floribundas, they all are roses that are important to plant properly, because with our long winters, you often have to prune these severely in the spring. But they just come up with repeat flowering. This one will have kind of clusters of flowers. The floribundas will have even more clusters of flowers. Look at that color. Look at the possibility of getting scent from those beautiful flowers. Again, grafted plants locally, own root through mail order. At the end of this program, I will have a slide that lists all of these rose names that you can take a screenshot or take a photo of for further reference, in case I'm moving through too fast for you here. There's a growing group of roses showing up in the marketplace that are called ground covers. And what these are roses that are often wider than they are tall, that take up space on the ground rather than grow vertically. Take a look at the dimensions of this plant. Only a foot high, and yet it'll spread out over your mulch, over the ground. Look at all that color. There's another couple of recent introductions in the Happy Trails series that are worth looking up online to get an idea of whether you think they'll work for you. These plants should all be on their own roots, no matter how you buy them. And I'm planting more and more ground cover roses to take up some of the space between my vertical roses. This year's miniature rose that caught my eye is the first knockout rose that is a miniature. And the flowers are derived from the double knockout shrub, which is my favorite. It's a glorious looking little plant. This year, we're going to have this plant available from the Denver Rose Society as a bare root plant. If this looks like a good option for you, please contact Peggy Williams at her email address here for more information about procuring one and how to pick it up and everything. In addition, Peggy is our contact person for buying all of the Mile High fertilizer products that several of us stock. She can connect you with any of us if you need fertilizer this year. I'll also have her email address at the end of the program. If you've never planted a miniature rose, this is a great way to get started, and I recommend that you try one. I think you'll enjoy it. Star Roses is also one of the big distributors. They're the ones who first introduced the peace rose back in 1945, and every so often they come out with a new addition to add to the peace family. And this is the latest one, a hybrid tea. It's going to grow vertically up to 5 feet, should have strong fragrance and that gorgeous multicolored flower. Star roses will be available through local nurseries, but also some of their products will be available through some of the big box stores. Lately, in the last few years, it's been Home Depot. Whenever you're buying roses from a big box store, I recommend that you shop carefully and you make sure the roses have been properly hydrated. In other words, if the pot is too light, it's dried out, you should pass that one by and find one that's been well watered. But this is looks like a great addition to our gardens, full of color and fragrance. Sunset Horizon is a cluster flowering floribunda that's interesting because it changes color as it ages. It will open with those pretty yellow flowers and open wide, showing stamens that honeybees can get at. And then as it ages, it'll change to that deep pink color. So this is a chance to put in a flash of varying color in your gardens. That all of these should be own root plants no matter where you buy them. Bliss Parfuma is a member of the Parfuma group of roses that comes from Cortez Roses in northern Germany. And Cortez rigorously tests their roses before they offer them on the marketplace. And Star Roses is the importer of these plants. Cortez roses, for the most part, all do really well here in Colorado along the Front Range. And this one in particular has that beautiful English rose look. Will have some fragrance. And you note the line there for the ARS rating. That's where members of the excuse me, American Rose Society have rated roses in their gardens. And this one has received a particularly high rating. So I recommend you look for any of the Cortez roses and any of the Parfuma roses out there. And Bliss Parfuma, one of the newer ones, should do very well in our gardens. South Africa is a recent introduction. It's been out a few years. And the reason that I'm mentioning it here is that in 2019, the American Rose Society members voted it as their favorite rose of the year. Carol Shockley, who is a master rosarian, in a recent presentation had this quote where basically she says, "You need this rose." Well, I love the color. I'm going to be looking for this one this year. Should have some fragrance and should have that wonderful golden rich color for our gardens. The new David Austin introductions from their website this year are already out of stock. And I want to mention this one that is a recent introduction. It's been winning all these awards. This past year, it won the Members' Choice Award from ARS members for 2020. It also won a Members' Fragrance Award, which is very unusual. The James Alexander Gamble Fragrance Award is kind of like a Hall of Fame admission for the American Rose Society. So this would appear to be a pretty fragrant rose, huh? The David Austin website currently is listing this as being no longer in stock, but it may still be available from some other online sources. I don't know at this point if it's going to show up in our local nurseries, but this is one to keep note of. If for some reason you can't find it this year, it's well worth the effort to put in an early order for next year. Jackson & Perkins has been around for decades as a rose supplier along with other perennials. Roger Hines, who preceded me, this was his career, helping to develop roses for them. They do an excellent job. They're a mail order nursery. This is one of the recent introductions of Floribunda. If you order from them, be aware it will be a grafted plant and it will also be shipped to you bare root, meaning it's not in a pot, it's just has no soil attached to it and it's slowly awakening from dormancy. We do have instructions on our website about planting bare root roses, and any of our consulting rosarians can help you should you choose this route for your roses. Soaring to Glory is another Floribunda from Jackson & Perkins and also available from some other online nurseries. It honors Air Force service members and has a wonderful color and offers some fragrance. You may have noted that I have a thing about fragrant roses. Okay, Dave, what about climbers, you say? Well, let me offer you 3 red climbers to consider to add to your gardens this year. Cherry Frost has been out for a couple of years, should be in some of our local nurseries, maybe in big box stores. Also available from High Country Roses online. It was developed by an amateur hybridizer in Wisconsin who spent decades trying to develop a winter hardy rose. And when she offered this to Star Roses, they tested it. They found that it did well in all areas of the country. I like it because it's a modest size climber. So many of them get huge. This one offers a chance to just grow up a short trellis or an obelisk and offer you lots of repeat bloom through the season on a winter hardy plant that should keep its canopy each year to help you get off to a good start with your flowers in the spring. Lady in Red has been out for a couple of years now. It was in all the local nurseries. High Country Roses sells it. This will get to be a bigger climbing red rose. And local members who are rating roses here in the Rocky Mountain District have given this a particularly high rating, which is very encouraging. So many climbers can be spotty in our gardens about the ability for them to be winter hardy and to keep their canopy. And it appears that this one is doing a good job and will give you lots and lots of these gorgeous red flowers. This one you should be able to find throughout the Front Range region. Winter Circle, which was bred by Will Radler, who's the man who also developed all the knockout roses, should be a pretty hardy rose. They're zone 4. The American Rose Society rating is very high. It's unclear now how many local nurseries will carry this one this year. You may have to hunt for it. Currently, High Country Roses is showing they're out of stock. Hopefully, you'll have a few more. But this is one to go looking for because it has those beautiful open red flowers that honeybees should like, changes color in the fall and offers hips through the winter. This could be an excellent rose for our gardens also. With that being said, I want to say thank you to everyone who attended today. I'm here, I'm open to taking questions. And while I do so, I'll leave this slide up so that you can take photos of it or write down any contact information of anything that catches your eye here. And so again, thanks to everyone. And Kim, what are our questions?
Okay, that was a great presentation, Dave, and thank you. I just love that Bliss Parfuma. Is that how you say it?
Yes, it is.
It's beautiful. Okay, all right. So we have Susan Rutherford that asked, are the ground cover roses more beetle resistant than other roses?
That is unproven at that point. That really very little research has been done in our area about many of the roses and how they resist beetles. That there has been some surveys done at the Littleton War Memorial Garden, which is kind of a heritage garden of award-winning roses over the last 50, 60 years. And so that information is available. It should be available through CSU Extension website. And if we don't have that survey on our website, we can probably get it for you. But they don't, at this point, that garden doesn't grow any ground cover roses. And so this is the kind of thing that as a Rose Society, we need to do a good job of sharing information on. And so I hope that if you try roses in your garden and the newer ones, that you keep track of which are attracting beetles and which the beetles seem to avoid. And I'm very interested in receiving all that information, and we'll share it as we gather it. So let's all learn more, because the beetles are an issue for large areas of the Denver metro and Pueblo areas in particular, and they are expanding. So let's learn more about what we can do to minimize their impact.
Okay, a follow-up question for Susan. She asks, if Olivia is sold out, is there another new David Austin rose you really recommend?
Well, the other two that are out this year are also sold out, and so I haven't had a chance to plant any of these and see about them. I can say that there is a recent introduction called Lady of Shalott, which many of our members have planted, and some of our most experienced rosarians I note are starting to put in this year. And that might be worth giving a try too, and perhaps looking up online to see what you think of them.
All right, so Jill Arnson asked, is cherry frost fragrant?
Not that I'm aware of. It certainly is not bragging about it. We'll put it like that. With climbers, I don't always worry so much about fragrance because they're often growing in the back of the garden against the fence. I particularly like the idea of something like cherry frost and its ability to offer vertical accents behind some of your other roses. So I'm not aware that this one has a great deal of fragrance. Jill, I think you ought to plant it, check it out, and let me know.
Okay. Question from Jody. Did you mention a garden to see or shop in Fort Collins?
I didn't mention any particular nurseries in the Fort Collins area that, check online to see who's available, and you can contact them to see if they have their rose lists available and can tell you whether they're stocking any that I've covered today. Some of the websites may have rose lists of what they're carrying this year posted. For instance, Tagawa Nurseries, which is in the southeast area, Denver area, does have their rose list posted. And I believe Ectors in the Denver area also has posted a rose list. So do a search online for your local nurseries and see if they have a list, or give them a call to find out if they're offering anything you're particularly looking for.
Okay, Janet Bethurst has a question. Are there any climbers that have good fragrance, particularly yellow climbers?
I'm not aware that there's any yellow climbers. I think there's a new one that's called Golden Opportunity this year that you can research. I don't have it handy here. I seem to remember that they mentioned fragrance in their description. In addition, some of the David Austin roses that get taller can be trained as climbers or short climbers, and may very well offer a great deal of fragrance.
All right, looks like Barbara Holland has a question. Do ground cover roses need pruning?
I'm sorry, do ground cover roses?
Uh-huh.
Yes, they will. They ground cover roses, all roses have to get through our long winters. As I've said before, to me, there's only two seasons in Colorado. There's growing season and there's winter. And so our winters are longer than our growing seasons. And so the roses have to endure these long winters. And there's many factors that can cause canes to become damaged or die. And so when you go out in the spring, in late April, and again, I want to invite everybody to come to our pruning demo at the Sheriff's Garden in Golden. And we can talk about this more, but you're going to cut away dead, damaged, and diseased material to help emphasize new growth for the new year. And so, yes, some of the ground cover roses may suffer some damage that needs to be trimmed away, but with good care and some fertilizer and good watering practices, they should restore themselves quickly to their full dimensions.
Shelley Smith says, should I pot up new HCR and grow on before putting in the real garden?
That is kind of a matter of personal choice. Basically, if you're going to get a young plant of kind of a first year rooted cutting, which is mostly what you will get from any online nursery, the idea will be to get it planted and grow it on as soon as you can, so that it can get as large as possible for winter sets in the fall. Personally, I usually plant high country roses plants directly into my garden. If you have good soil conditions and good watering, it should be all it needs to get established during the course of the summer. If you are not ready or think that in other words, if you want to get your plants soon and you're not ready to put them in the garden, then you can certainly pot them up for another month or so. But I like to get my new roses in the ground before the really hot summer weather sets in late June and early July.
All right, so that was all the questions. If you have a question for Dave and you post it later, we'll make sure it gets over to him for him to answer via email. Thank you so much, Dave. It was such a wonderful presentation. And that has come to the end of our agenda. And we're going to have the president of the Denver Rose Society speak here in just a moment. But I do want to let you all know that this presentation will be available next week on the American Rose Society website. And that website is rose.org. Also, it will be posted on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and you search American Rose Society, you should see the video there. And please make sure you subscribe to our channel if you have not done so already. Please tell a friend to subscribe. We have some wonderful educational videos on YouTube as well as our website. And we just want to make sure everyone is taking full advantage of those. All right, so at this time, we will have Mr. Dick Sargent go ahead and close us out.
Well, thank you very much. And I was sitting here throughout this session and try to come up with a word that would best describe it. And I found two. The first is incredible. And then the other one is phenomenal. When you watch something like this, at least for me, it's totally humbling. And I just comfort myself, I learned some time ago, there are about 44,000 different roses. So nobody has yard big enough to take them all. So just pick the ones you like and enjoy them. But I think the thing that's really delightful for me, I am a novice, but to have somebody like David actually in our Denver Rose Society, who is very, very, very generous with his time in helping, great teacher, very compassionate, understanding. It's just been a marvel, and I just want to say this was a great presentation. I certainly think that, and I'm glad you're going to put this in the archives. It's well worth reviewing. I took a lot of pictures myself, and so that's basically all I've got to say, except a lot of thank you for the presenters in particular. And then Leona, thank you very much for putting this whole thing together, and Barbara, introductions and all that you bring to the Rose Society yourself. So with that, I just say goodbye to everybody, and I hope that this was good for you. And of course, even if you live in Key West, we'd love to have you as a member of the Denver Rose Society. And so that's basically it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and have a great day.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank
Bye.
you.